It is 7 a.m. and we are about to start a 500-mile journey to North Carolina. It's entirely too early, or too late, depending who you're asking. The sun is now in my eyes, and that's not a thing I'm familiar with anymore. I'm just getting off of work. I'm probably going to try and sleep. Flag is driving. We're going on a 500-mile trip to try and dig up some barn finds. So yes, myself, Jonathan, and my brother are headed up to North Carolina. That is, as you see here, a very long trip. We're talking 13 hours round trip, and that's just assuming that everything goes normal and smoothly. So why are we making a 13-hour journey in one single day? That is to get a very new special project that I'm going to attempt to give you a very brief bit of history behind. One of the most common questions I get is, how did I start working on cars? How did I get my knowledge? You know, how did I get started into it? And that all boils down into a lot of family influence. But from a very young age, I always had people around me that were very mechanically inclined in different ways. My grandparents on my mother's side were truck drivers, and my grandfather there was very mechanically inclined, you know, was the type to fix all of his own stuff. On my dad's side, his father was a mechanic himself, who worked on a lot of oddball cars, which might be where I picked up that trait. Unfortunately, I came along a little too late to ever get to know him, but obviously he had a huge influence on my father. A lot of the people that you will ask that are grassroots mechanics or kind of work on cars and are in car culture like I am will say that they're influenced mostly by their parents or their relatives or someone close to them in that regard. So it may not be the world's most unique story or background, but it is something that is very important to me. All through growing up, I was always the hands-on type. I always wanted to take everything apart, figure out how it worked, try to fix things, and although I'm sure I frustrated him a lot over the years as I was growing up, you know, breaking all his stuff, losing all his tools and whatnot, he never discouraged me from trying. He never discouraged me from trying to figure out how things work mechanically, and that has had a huge influence on my ability now to understand how things work, to understand how to take things apart and put them back together, and just effectively use my own intuition to figure things out, rather than being, you know, an ASE mechanic or, you know, a highly skilled, trained professional in this. It's a very different way of learning how to do this kind of thing. My dad helped me a lot in my early car history. I was very obsessed with getting 240SXs, and that was what ended up being my first car. Little did I know how much I was pushing him out of his comfort zone with that, because he was always a muscle car guy. He was always the classic car guy. When you're talking a 1990 240SX, it's a whole different ballgame. But I think we really bonded a lot through that, and we both learned just immense amounts. But that car really kind of bridged a gap there, because I had gotten into, you know, the modern import stuff, and he was more into the classic muscle car stuff. But that car, you know, it is kind of a bridge point between the two, and in that he was able to teach me a lot about what are the basic elements that make a car work. You know, fuel, air, spark, and it'll run, that kind of stuff. And I was able to kind of break a little bit of that fear barrier for him as to the computer era of cars. You know, it's actually still the basic principle that it always was. There's just a lot of other additional stuff to keep things in check and balanced. My brother and I are very grateful for all our parents did for us, to try and repay them for all that they did, you know, all that they sacrificed to make sure we had good childhoods. A year or so ago, my brother ended up taking my mom out to Vegas, you know, a big, you know, awesome trip, something that would have been in her wildest dreams a decade ago. So that's really cool. But then it comes to Dad, like, well, Dad's not much of a traveler, and any occasion he's a pain to buy gifts for because he never wants anything. But then the ideas started to swirl around, you know. Obviously, huge car guys, always loved cars and everything like that, and certainly has made sacrifices for his own personal projects to make sure the family had transportation and such. The obvious thing for us was always, you know, he's always had El Caminos. That's the car that's always been, you know, the staple kind of our family. and take one of those and fix it up for him. But that's also his car. That's his daily driver. So we can't just go take that from him. And you know, it's not very interesting to us to be like, hey, we bought you a LS drivetrain, something like that. That's so generic, so boring to us that it just doesn't feel right. So this other idea happened to come about, and that is what we're doing today. One of the vehicles that I've always had conversations with my dad about is the Datsun pickup, because it's one of the very few interactions with Japanese cars that my dad ever had growing up. It was a truck that his dad had. He had a 521, one of the square-bodied Datsuns. Then he had one of these, a 70s Datsun 620, one of the most iconic basic work trucks of the 70s and 80s. But because of their Japanese nature, they rust really bad, and because they were such great work trucks, not a lot of them stayed around. So despite being one of the most common vehicles in the 70s and 80s, these things are extremely hard to come by in today's world. But I put out the call on the Patreon Discord, spread across the nation, get everybody to look in their area on Craigslist to try and find one of these. And wouldn't you know, Zargonis found this guy up in North Carolina. I think that fender is fixable.
It's got a ding in
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, so the other one had a ding in it too.
Yeah. Huh? Not anymore. I'm an expert bodyman.
If I just somebody lean against it.
500 miles is a long way to go to buy a truck sight unseen, but it was a really interesting trip that we have lots of stories from, and honestly, I think it's gonna work out. As for the actual reveal, I decided to keep that a private family thing, and I can tell you that Dad was very excited and very surprised at the presentation of the truck. For the time being, I'm going to be keeping the truck here in my garage, trying to get it up and running and get it drivable for, you know, around the town kind of stuff, before we eventually try to do some kind of resto mod project with it. There's no concrete details as of right now, but it sure would be great to get it to the point where we could at least drive around town and relive some of those memories with it. Alright, so here it is, a little handheld camera tour of the truck. I gotta say, the only gripe I have about this video camera is not wide enough of an angle for something like this, but I'm gonna do the best I can. 1972 Datsun 620 pickup, standard cab, short bed, which honestly for me was the most ideal of the options that are available. So any truck like this is going to have quite a history behind it. And for this one, we don't know a lot of its history, but you can tell. It's been a garage-style project for some people, probably many people, for many of years. The good news is, people at least tried to keep it maintained. They tried to keep paint on it. You know, it never just seemed to have sat in a field somewhere rusting away. But that does not mean it is rust-free by any means, and that every repair that's ever been done to it was well done. There's lots of botching going on, but these things are so amazingly simple that I'm not too daunted by it. One of the design elements that I really love with this truck, and something that my dad noted that he really loved, is this fin or stripe down the side that goes into the bed. It's a very cool design feature. These hooks are also really cool. These are like big steel hooks that go into the sides there for strapping things down. You can strap a tonneau cover to it. Pretty neat. But overall, compared to the early Datsun pickup, and compared to the later ones, this one has the most style. This actually had some design language to it, rather than being just pure utility. Personally, my favorite angle, the back. I really love the raised Datsun letters across the back. That somebody went ahead and got the vinyl decals to finish that off. Pretty cool, nice little detail there. Inside of the bed, we have another fender, damaged fender, but it's nice to have more, more of the original steel available to us should we need it. And the bed, I mean, it's been tried to been coated, But overall, there's no rust holes, there's no big dents or anything, so that's very doable. One of the areas of these trucks that rusts the most right along here, and that is a body seam that connects the two pieces of bed together. Those usually rust really bad. This one either just didn't or has been repaired somewhat correctly, because it's actually looking pretty straight, pretty good on both sides. That's cool and nice. Another big issue, of course, with any old Japanese car, or any old car in general, is the rockers. That one, you can tell it's got some botch repairs in it and some rust for sure, as well as the front fender, which I bet you that front fender damaged more by somebody's intuition to fill the cavity here with foam. Great stuff is only great stuff if what you're putting it on doesn't rust. If it does, get it out of there. But overall, the truck's pretty straight. It's pretty good. There's little dents, there's little bobs and missed body work opportunities in the past. Obviously like a garage level paint job, but it isn't bad at all. Anybody out there that's a parts hunter, that trim piece along the hood is one of the few things that we're actually missing. If we can't find it, probably just paint the edge black and call it good. Harder to get to. Here's the other side. You can see this fender was painted again. Probably a replacement fender, but it doesn't quite match the rest of the truck. It's close, but the other side's not bad. And on the inside, there's not much to be seen. We got the basic, cardboard, hardboard door panel there, not finished. Inside, a pretty good cover on the seat, in nice shape. Somebody went ahead and changed the rear window from a standard piece of glass to this kind of aftermarket option sliding opening glass. It looks a little goofy because it pokes out so far, but I really think it would look a lot better if this aluminum was painted black. I think it would look more factory that way. So maybe in the future that's something to consider. But inside, there's very little to it. So to say that it's in good or bad shape is kind of irrelevant because there's so little going on. The biggest thing is the wiring. People have been in here over many generations hacking and tapping into all of these wires. A lot of the things are missing. Obviously the radio missing. But other than that, the rest of the stuff is here. And this is all very doable and fixable. It's got a dash cam on it. I'm sure we could do something a little bit better than that. A great laminated wood visor. But when you have it down, at least there's a hole you can see through. Chintzy Advanced Auto Parts tack that doesn't even work, I don't think. None of the actual gauges work as far as I could tell. So that's all stuff to be worked on in the future. According to this, 65,000 miles. Can't believe that because the speedo doesn't work. And I guess that kind of starts to get us into some of the mechanical stuff. Biggest problem as of right now, that's supposed to actually do something. There's zero fluid in the clutch hydraulic system. The brakes, there's a little bit of brakes, but they're not great. So those are the things that he noted. He was honest and noted that in the ad that it has no clutch and has no brakes. I figured that meant that it had no clutch, like the clutch plate was bad, but nope, just a hydraulics that we know so far. Well, let's go ahead and pop that hood. Here, one last thing inside. When I opened the door when we went to look at it, that's what was laying on the floor. 2 packs fuses. Never a good sign. Under the hood, a very pleasant surprise. Not only is there virtually nothing to these engines, but somebody's actually gone through here and done some extensive work. Not only in the engine bay, rust proofing it all, and, well, not tidying up any wiring. Whoever was attempting to do wiring on this thing, probably not their strong suit. But, according to the owner, the engine, when he got it, was claimed to be rebuilt, but it was not operational. So he took it to another shop and had it rebuilt once again. and everything looks like it's in pretty good working order. I mean, everything looks clean. There's gaskets where gaskets should be. A little bit more RTV, orange RTV specifically, than I would like to see. But the most important thing is that it's already been converted to a Weber carb. That is very good news because the factory carburetors are a mess. And these are well documented and pretty easy to get going. Distributor, I think it's new, but it still uses the factory dual point setup. There is a modern distributor in the truck that somebody, I think, wanted to convert it to, but maybe never got around to it. Tiny little alternator, huge oil filter, nice new starter, transmission looks nice and clean. The transmission actually looks shockingly a lot like the KA transmission, but this little 1.6 liter, apparently bored out, so probably like 1.7 liter inline 4 from the factory, made about 90 horsepower, maybe 95, and who knows how many it's lost over the years since then. But the truck weighs less than 2,500 pounds, and that should be enough. But future plans may see us not using this engine. We'll just have to see. If we can get it running super nice and reliable, then it would be great to keep it. Well, let me see if I can crank her up and at least have it running for you guys. Not going to say it runs perfect, but it runs a lot better than I expected. There's a lot of loose ends to do for the engine to try and get more performance out of it, and the fact that who knows what fuel is in this thing or how much, but overall, it's a pretty good sign. Really excited about this.